Alright, let's sleep. Pull the blankets up to your chin, fluff your pillow, and imagine you are standing at the edge of a small English village in the year 1340, a year like any other, in a century that would soon be shattered by plague and war. But for now, the world is quiet, the fields are green, and the only sounds are the lowing of cattle, the crowing of roosters, and the distant ring of the church bell calling the faithful to prayer. The village is called Oakhurst, a name you won't find on any map, because it exists only in the imagination, though it could be any one of thousands of villages that dotted the medieval English countryside. It sits in a shallow valley, nestled between rolling hills covered in oak and ash trees. A small stream winds through the center of the village, providing water for drinking, washing, and watering the animals. The church, a modest stone building with a square tower, stands at the highest point, its bell tower visible for miles around. Around it cluster the houses of the peasants, low, smoke-blackened huts made of wattle and daub, with thatched roofs that leak when it rains and harbor spiders, mice, and the occasional rat. This is the world we are about to enter. It is a world without electricity, without running water, without antibiotics, without any of the comforts we take for granted. It is a world where life is short, hard, and often brutal, but also a world of deep faith, strong community, and unexpected joy. It is the world of the Middle Ages, and we are going to spend a year in it. Let us begin at the beginning, in the dead of winter, when the land lies fallow and the villagers huddle in their huts, praying for spring. January, the deep of winter. The first day of January is cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. The sky is a pale, watery gray, and a thin layer of frost covers everything, the thatched roofs, the bare branches of the trees, the muddy paths that wind between the houses. Inside the hut of Edwin the ploughman, the air is thick with smoke from the hearth fire that burns in the center of the room. There is no chimney, the smoke simply rises to the thatch and escapes through gaps in the roof, leaving everything coated in a fine layer of soot. Edwin's wife, Matilda, is up before dawn, stirring the embers and adding a few sticks of wood to the fire. The heat is welcome, but it never really warms the hut, the walls are too thin, and the wind whistles through the gaps in the wattle. Edwin and Matilda share their hut with their 3 children, 2 boys, aged 10 and 7, and a girl of 5, as well as a cow, a pig, and a dozen chickens. The animals live in a pen at one end of the hut, separated from the family by a low wattle fence. Their body heat helps to keep the hut warm, but they also bring fleas, flies, and the constant smell of manure. It is not a pleasant way to live, but it is the only way they know. The family sleeps on straw pallets on the floor, covered with rough woolen blankets that Matilda has woven herself on the family loom. There is no furniture to speak of, a rough wooden table, a couple of stools, a trunk for storing clothes and bedding. A few cooking pots hang from hooks near the fire. It is a meager existence, but compared to many of their neighbors, Edwin and Matilda are relatively well off. They have a cow that gives milk, a pig that will be slaughtered in the autumn, and enough land to grow the grain that keeps them alive. Breakfast is a bowl of pottage, a thick, grayish porridge made from oats, water, and whatever vegetables are available. Today, Matilda has added a handful of dried peas and a pinch of salt. It is not a luxurious meal, but it is warm and filling. The children eat their pottage with wooden spoons, their fingers numb with cold. Edwin eats quickly, then pulls on his rough tunic, his hood, and his leather shoes with wooden soles. He has work to do. In winter, there is less work on the land, the fields are frozen, and the crops have been harvested, but there is always something to be done. Today, Edwin is repairing the plough. The wooden share has cracked, and he needs to carve a new one from a piece of oak that he has been saving. He works in the corner of the hut, his breath misting in the cold air, while Matilda spins while using a distaff and spindle. The children play quietly, a game of knucklebones that they have made from sheep's ankle bone stock. Outside, the village is quiet. Most of the men are doing similar work, mending tools, repairing fences, chopping wood for the fire. The women are busy with spinning, weaving, and the endless chores of keeping the household running. The old people, those who have survived into their 40s or 50s, which is old by medieval standards, sit by the fire, telling stories of the old days, when the king was young and the harvests were plentiful. The church bell rings for midday prayer, and the villagers gather in the churchyard. The priest, Father Thomas, is a thin, earnest man in his 30s, with a tonsured head and a patient smile. He leads the villagers in prayer, the Lord's Prayer, the Hail Mary, and a prayer for the souls of the dead. The villagers are devout, because they have no choice. The church is the center of their world, and the priest is the only link they have to the divine. After the prayers, Father Thomas gives a short sermon. He reminds the villagers that winter is a time of patience, a time to prepare for the rebirth of spring. He urges them to be kind to one another, to share what they have with the poor, and to remember that God sees everything. The villagers nod and murmur their agreement. Then they disperse, returning to their huts and their chores. The rest of the day passes slowly. The sun sets early, and by 4 in the afternoon, the village is shrouded in darkness. The family gathers around the fire, eating a simple supper of bread and cheese, washed down with weak, home-brewed ale. The children are tired, and they fall asleep quickly. Edwin and Matilda sit in silence, listening to the wind howling outside. Tomorrow will be another day, and the day after that, and the day after that, each one much the same as the last. February, the hungry month. February is the hardest month of the year. The food stores are running low, and the new crops are still months away. The villagers call it the hungry month, a time when the thin veneer of civilization frays and people begin to feel the pinch of starvation. Edwin's family is luckier than most. They have a cow that gives milk, and Matilda is careful with the stores. She stretches the flour with dried peas and nettles, and she makes sure that every scrap of food is used. But even so, the children are beginning to look thin. Their cheeks are hollow, and their eyes have a hungry, desperate look. The village as a whole is in a similar state. The communal oven, which the villagers use to bake their bread, is cold more often than not. There is not enough flour to justify lighting it. The blacksmith's forge is quiet, because there is no money to pay for his services. The tavern, which usually rings with laughter and the clink of ale cups, is almost empty. No one has the money to drink. The only bright spot is Candlemas, which falls on February 2nd. This is a church feast that celebrates the presentation of Jesus at the temple. The villagers process to the church, each carrying a candle that has been blessed by the priest. The candles are lit, and the church glows with a warm, flickering light. It is a moment of hope in the darkness of winter, a reminder that spring is coming. But spring is still a long way off. And in the meantime, the villagers must survive. March, the turning of the year. March brings a change in the weather. The days grow longer, and the frost begins to thaw. The fields, which have been frozen solid for months, begin to soften. It is time to start thinking about the plowing. The medieval agricultural year follows a strict calendar, dictated by the seasons and the church. In March, the villagers begin to prepare the fields for the spring sowing. The land is divided into 3 large fields, each of which is cultivated in rotation. One field is planted with winter wheat, one with spring crops like oats and barley, and one is left fallow to recover its fertility. This is the 3-field system, and it has been the backbone of European agriculture for centuries. Edwin hitches his ox to the plough, a heavy wooden contraption with an iron share that cuts a furrow through the soil. The ox is old and stubborn, but it knows its job, and it plods steadily across the field, pulling the plough behind it. Edwin follows, guiding the plough with one hand and shouting encouragement to the ox. The work is backbreaking, the soil is heavy, the plough is awkward, and the ox is not always cooperative. But Edwin is not alone. The village works together, sharing the labor and the tools. Today, it is his turn to plough the Lord's domain, the land that belongs to the local lord, Sir Geoffrey. In return for the right to farm his own strip of land, Edwin must give a portion of his labor to the Lord. It is the feudal system, and it has been this way for generations. The other men are working too, some are plowing, others are spreading manure, others are repairing the fences that keep the animals out of the crops. The women are busy as well, they are planting vegetables in the small plots behind their huts, and they are gathering wild greens from the hedgerows. It is hard work, but it is also hopeful work. The land is waking up, and with it, the village is waking up. The church celebrates the Feast of the Annunciation on March 25th, the day when the angel Gabriel announced to Mary that she would bear the Son of God. It is a major feast, and the villagers take the day off work to attend Mass and celebrate. There is a small fair in the churchyard, with a few stalls selling trinkets, food, and ale. The children play games, tag, hide and seek, and a rough version of football that involves a lot of kicking and shoving. The adults drink, dance, and gossip. It is a rare moment of joy in the long grind of the year. April, the sowing of the seed. April is the month of sowing. The fields have been plowed and harrowed, and now it is time to plant the seeds that will become the harvest. The villagers work from dawn to dusk, scattering the grain by hand, a handful of seeds, a step forward, another handful. It is slow, tedious work, but it is also sacred. The church blesses the seeds, and the villagers pray for a good harvest. The weather is unpredictable, one day it is warm and sunny, the next it is cold and rainy. The villagers watch the sky constantly, reading the clouds for signs of what is to come. They are superstitious, and they believe that certain signs foretell the future. A red sky at night means good weather, a red sky in the morning means rain. They also believe in omens, a crow flying from the left is unlucky, a hare crossing your path means trouble. Edwin's eldest son, William, is 10 years old, and this year he is old enough to help with the sowing. He follows his father, scattering the seed with a wooden bowl. It is his first real taste of adult work, and he takes it seriously. He wants to be a good farmer, like his father. He dreams of owning his own land one day, not just a strip, but a whole field. It is a distant dream, but it keeps him going. The women are also busy, they are planting the vegetable garden, which will provide the family with food throughout the summer and autumn. Matilda plants peas, beans, onions, leeks, and cabbages. She also plants herbs, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, which will be used for cooking and medicine. The garden is small, but it is vital. Without it, the family would starve. Easter falls in April this year, and it is the most important feast of the Christian calendar. The villagers prepare for weeks, fasting, praying, and making confession. On Easter Sunday, the church is packed. The priest leads the service, and the congregation sings hymns of resurrection and hope. After the service, there is a feast, the first meat in weeks, washed down with ale and wine. It is a celebration of new life, and for a few hours, the villagers forget their troubles. May, the month of flowers. May is the most beautiful month of the year. The fields are green, the hedgerows are white with hawthorn blossom, and the air is warm and sweet. The villagers celebrate the coming of summer with the festival of May Day. On the morning of May Day, the young people of the village rise early and go into the woods to gather branches and flowers. They return with armfuls of greenery, which they use to decorate the village. A maypole is erected on the village green, a tall wooden pole, painted with bright colors, with ribbons hanging from the top. The young people dance around the maypole, weaving the ribbons into intricate patterns. It is a pagan tradition, but the church has tolerated it, because it brings joy to the people. The villagers also choose a May Queen, a young woman who is crowned with flowers and leads the celebrations. This year, the May Queen is Emma, the daughter of the village carpenter. She is 17 years old, pretty, and popular. She wears a crown of white blossoms and a dress of white linen. She looks like a princess, and for one day, she is treated like one. The celebrations continue all day, there is music, dancing, and feasting. The men compete in athletic contests, wrestling, hammer throwing, and archery. The women watch and cheer. The children run around, playing games. It is a day of pure joy, a brief respite from the hard work of the year. But May is also a time of work. The crops need to be weeded, the sheep need to be sheared, and the animals need to be tended. The villagers cannot afford to relax for long. The maypole is left standing, a reminder of the joy of May, but the work goes on. June, the longest day. June is the month of the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. The sun rises early and sets late, and the villagers make the most of the daylight. They work from 3 a.m. until dusk, and they are exhausted by the end of the day. The haymaking begins in June. The grass in the meadows has grown tall, and it must be cut and dried before it can be stored for the winter. The men cut the grass with scythes, long, curved blades that they swing in a rhythmic motion. The women and children rake the cut grass into rows, turning it to dry in the sun. If the weather is good, the hay can be gathered in a few days. If it rains, the hay can be ruined, and the animals will starve. The work is hot and sweaty, but it is also communal. The villagers work together, sharing the labor and the rewards. There is a sense of solidarity, a feeling that they are all in this together. It is not a perfect community, there are feuds, jealousies, and petty crimes, but when it comes to the essential work of survival, they pull together. The church celebrates the feast of St. John the Baptist on June 24th. It is another major feast, and the villagers mark it with bonfires, processions, and prayers. The bonfires are lit on the hillsides, and the villagers dance around them, believing that the fire has the power to purify and protect. It is an ancient tradition, older than Christianity, and it has survived because it gives people hope. July, the heat of summer. July is the hottest month of the year. The sun beats down on the fields, and the crops, the wheat, the barley, the oats, begin to ripen. The villagers watch them closely, praying for good weather. A storm at this time of year could destroy the harvest and doom them to starvation. The work in July is focused on the crops, weeding, watering, and protecting them from pests. The children are given the job of scaring away the birds, which have a taste for the ripening grain. They run through the fields, shouting and waving sticks, keeping the birds at bay. It is a boring job, but it is essential. The village also hosts a fair in July, a small event, but an important one. The fair is held on the feast of St. James, the patron saint of the village. Merchants from neighboring towns come to sell their wares, cloth, tools, spices, and trinkets. There are also entertainments, jugglers, musicians, and a bear baiting. The villagers save their pennies for months to spend at the fair. It is a chance to buy things they cannot make themselves, and to see things they have never seen before. Edwin buys a new knife, a small, sharp blade that he has been needing for months. He also buys a ribbon for Matilda, a small luxury, but one that makes her smile. The children buy sweetmeats, honeyed nuts and candied fruits, and they eat them slowly, savoring every bite. August, the harvest. August is the most important month of the year, the month of the harvest. The fields are golden with ripe grain, and the villagers work from dawn to dusk, cutting, gathering, and threshing. The harvest is a communal effort, the whole village turns out to help. The men cut the grain with sickles and scythes, working in long lines across the field. The women and children gather the cut grain into bundles, which are stacked into sheaves. The sheaves are left to dry in the sun, then gathered into stacks and brought to the barn for threshing. The work is hard, but there is a sense of urgency and excitement. The harvest is the culmination of a year's work, the moment when the villagers see the fruits of their labor. If the harvest is good, they will have enough to eat through the winter. If it is poor, they will face hunger. The church blesses the harvest, and the villagers give thanks to God for his bounty. There is a harvest festival, with a special mass and a feast. The villagers eat, drink, and celebrate, knowing that they have survived another year. September, the autumn plowing. September is the month of the autumn plowing. The fields that have been harvested must be plowed and prepared for the winter wheat. The villagers work the land once again, turning the soil and planting the seeds that will lie dormant through the winter and sprout in the spring. The work is similar to the spring plowing, but there is a difference: the weather is cooler, and the days are shorter. The villagers work with a sense of urgency, knowing that winter is coming and there is much to be done. The church celebrates the feast of St. Michael on September 29, a major feast that marks the end of the agricultural year. The villagers attend Mass and give thanks for the harvest. They also pay their tithes, a tenth of their produce, which goes to the church. It is a heavy burden, but they pay it without complaint, because they fear the consequences of not paying. October, the gathering of the stores. October is the month of preparation. The villagers gather the last of the crops, store the grain in the barn, and salt the meat that will see them through the winter. The pig is slaughtered, and every part of it is used. The meat is salted or smoked, the fat is rendered into lard, and the intestines are made into sausages. The villagers also gather firewood, knowing that they will need it to survive the cold months ahead. They cut down trees, split the logs, and stack them in their huts. It is hard work, but it is essential. The church celebrates the Feast of All Saints on November 1st, followed by All Souls on November 2nd, a time to remember the dead. The villagers attend Mass and pray for the souls of their loved ones. They also visit the graves of the dead, leaving flowers and offerings. It is a solemn time, a reminder that life is short and death is always near. November, the dead of winter. November is the beginning of winter. The days grow short, the nights grow long, and the cold returns. The villagers huddle in their huts, trying to stay warm. The food stores are full, but they must be rationed. There are many months to get through before the next harvest. The work of the year is over, and there is little to do. The villagers spend their days indoors, repairing tools, weaving cloth, and telling stories. It is a time of rest, but also a time of boredom and anxiety. The long winter nights are dark and cold, and the villagers sometimes struggle to keep their spirits up. The church provides some comfort. The Advent season begins in November, and the villagers prepare for Christmas. They fast, pray, and make confession. It is a time of spiritual preparation, a time to reflect on the year that has passed and the year that is to come. December, the 12 days of Christmas. December is the month of Christmas, the most important festival of the year. The villagers prepare for weeks, baking, cleaning, and decorating. The church is adorned with evergreen branches, and the nativity scene is set up in the chancel. Christmas lasts for 12 days, from December 25th to January 6th. It is a time of feasting, dancing, and celebration. The villagers eat the best food they have: the salted meat, the fresh bread, the spiced ale. They give gifts to one another, small tokens of affection, often handmade. The highlight of the Christmas season is the Mummers' Play, a short, bawdy performance in which the villagers dress up as characters from the old stories. They go from house to house, performing and collecting small gifts. It is a tradition that goes back centuries, and it brings joy to the whole village. The year ends with the Feast of Epiphany on January 6th, the day when the three wise men visited the infant Jesus. It is a solemn day, a day of reflection. The villagers attend Mass and give thanks for the year that has passed. Then they return to their huts, ready to begin the cycle anew. The wider world, the village and the kingdom. But Oakhurst is not an island. It is part of a larger world, the Kingdom of England, ruled by King Edward III, a warrior king who is currently fighting a war against the French. The war is far away, but its effects are felt in the village. The king needs money for his armies, and he raises taxes that the villagers must pay, even if it means going hungry. The villagers hear stories of the war, of great battles and heroic deeds. They hear of the king's victories at Crécy and Poitiers, and they are proud of their king. But they also hear of the cost, the men who have died, the villages that have been burned, the families that have been shattered. The war is not the only threat. There are also bandits, desperate men who have turned to crime to survive. They raid villages, stealing food and livestock. The villagers live in fear of these raids, and they take precautions. They lock their doors at night, they keep their animals close, and they watch for strangers. And then there is the church, the great, all-powerful institution that dominates every aspect of life. The church is the source of salvation, but it is also the source of power and wealth. The priests and bishops are the richest people in the kingdom, and they wield enormous influence. The villagers pay their tithes, they obey the priests, and they fear the wrath of God. The people of Oakhurst, a year in their lives. Let us spend a year with the people of Oakhurst, and see what their lives are really like. Edwin the plowman is a serf, he is tied to the land, and he cannot leave without his lord's permission. He works hard, but he is poor. He owns almost nothing, a few tools, a few animals, a hut that is barely standing. But he is proud of his work, and he takes satisfaction in a good harvest. He dreams of a better life, but he knows that it will never come. Matilda, his wife, is the heart of the household. She manages the cooking, the cleaning, the spinning, and the weaving. She also helps in the fields when the work is heavy. She is tough, resourceful, and endlessly patient. She has buried 2 children, one who died in infancy, and one who was taken by a fever. She grieves for them, but she does not speak of her grief. She just carries on. William, their eldest son, is 10 years old. He is old enough to help with the work, but young enough to still enjoy the games of childhood. He dreams of becoming a knight, of wearing shining armor and fighting for the king. It is a foolish dream, he is a peasant's son, and he will never be a knight, but it gives him something to hope for. Emma, their daughter, is 7 years old. She helps her mother with the household chores, collecting eggs, feeding the chickens, and spinning wool. She is learning to weave, and she is getting quite good at it. She dreams of getting married and having her own family. Father Thomas, the priest, is a good man. He cares for his flock, and he does his best to guide them through the difficulties of life. He is not always successful, some of his parishioners are stubborn and sinful, but he never gives up. He believes that God has a plan for everyone, even the lowliest peasant. Sir Geoffrey, the lord of the manor, lives in a large stone house at the edge of the village. He is a knight, and he has fought in the king's wars. He is not a cruel lord, he treats his peasants fairly, and he does not demand more than they can give. But he is also a man of his time, and he believes that the feudal system is ordained by God. He is the master, and they are his servants. The village, the community that binds them all together. They are not always kind to one another, there are feuds, jealousies, and petty crimes. But when it matters, they come together, to help a neighbor in need, to celebrate a wedding, or to mourn a death. The year ends, a reflection. And so the year comes full circle. The winter has returned, and the villagers are once again huddled in their huts, waiting for the spring. They have survived another year, a year of hard work, of joy and sorrow, of hope and fear. They have planted and harvested, they have celebrated and mourned, they have prayed and they have worked. They do not know what the future holds. They do not know that in a few years, a terrible plague will sweep across Europe, killing millions of people, perhaps even them. They do not know that their world is about to change forever. All they know is the rhythm of the seasons, the plowing, the sowing, the reaping, the rest. And that is enough. What can we learn from their lives? As you drift off to sleep, think about the people of Oakhurst. Think about their hard lives, their simple joys, their deep faith. They had so little, yet they found meaning in their work, their families, and their community. They faced hardships that we can barely imagine, hunger, disease, cold, and the constant threat of violence, yet they persevered. They laughed, they loved, they mourned, and they carried on. We have so much more than they did, comfortable homes, abundant food, modern medicine, and the freedom to choose our own path. And yet, we often complain about the small inconveniences of life, the traffic, the weather, the slow internet. The people of Oakhurst would have laughed at our complaints. They would have traded places with us in a heartbeat. So tonight, as you lie in your warm bed, be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for the roof over your head, the food on your table, and the people who love you. Be grateful that you do not have to plow a field with a wooden plow, or watch your children die of hunger, or live in constant fear of the next raid. And remember the people of Oakhurst, not as distant figures in a history book, but as real people, who lived, loved, and struggled just like you. Their world is gone, but their spirit lives on, in the fields they tilled, the churches they built, and the stories they told. Sleep well. Sleep deeply. And may your dreams be as simple and as beautiful as a May Day dance around a maypole. Good night.